Hey everybody, it says we're live. How's it going? We're going to be doing a special podcast version. I want to say hello to everybody first. Hello to Lewis, Captain Privilege, Bro, Daniel, Alistair, Matt Ross, Redneck Lover, Tark, Bro again, Matt Graham, that guy Alex. I think that's everybody who's in there right now. There seems to be about 20 of you. So we're going to be doing a special podcast here. We're going to be treating this like it's a normal audio podcast recording. So we're going to ignore the chat for a little bit. We'll talk to you guys after the podcast is over. So we don't want to have this thing be sort of jumbled up with a lot of comments in the middle. We'll do the podcast, give our thoughts. And then in the same stream, after we wrap that up, we'll go into a kind of like after show type thing, just like the Ready Room is for Star Trek. And we'll talk to you guys there. So Clay, say hello to all these guys before we get into it.
Hi, everybody. We don't care about your opinions. We don't want to hear them.
And let us know how the audio sounds, guys, as we're doing this.
Yes, please. Sorry we're late. We had some technical difficulties on my end, which has put me on edge.
And let me know if specifically if Clay's too loud. He seems okay here. Let me know if I'm too quiet, but that's about it. Okay, so we'll get into this, and we'll treat it like a normal podcast, Clay, so we won't have the awkward breaks, but we'll just go through it as it stands now. Thank you guys for joining us live, and hopefully you enjoyed this little show that we're going to do. So, Clay, if you're ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Here we go. So Clay,
yes.
What before this started, what Star Trek did you try to catch up on Picard with? Did you try to catch up on anything? Did you rewatch any episodes?
I did. I watched the Hugh episode of TNG I Borg because I don't know if I ever watched it. I can't remember if I watched it for the show or not. It didn't seem familiar as I was watching it, and if you're screaming at me right now that I covered it and I had a lot to say about it, then I appreciate you having a better memory than I do, listeners of the show.
Is that the only thing that you watched?
Well, I mean, technically, we watched the Kelvin movies, which is sort of a primer for this as well.
That's a good reminder. I didn't even remember that we did that. So yeah, I did Star Trek 2009. I watched Best of Both Worlds, Measure of a Man, and I Borg, which is the one that you watched at the same time. So
if I had watched Measure of a Man, it probably would have helped because I didn't realize that, what's his name? Bruce Maddox was the guy from that episode.
Yeah.
So that's a nice little tie-in too.
And what's nice about living in this internet universe is that now I don't even think you need to watch things because the glut of coverage about it tells you exactly what you need to know going into these things. So it's not really like you need to know. As long as you follow someone on Twitter who's talking about it, you kind of know what's going on. But we're going to be talking...
find a 10 Easter eggs I might have missed video.
Yes.
About the first episode of Picard.
65 in Easter. Can we talk about that first? An Easter egg is not a detail in something. An Easter egg is a hidden thing that should not exist in that universe, but does as a kind of like, think it's like an egg existing hidden somewhere in your house.
Yeah, I would agree and disagree about that because I think that's probably a catch-all term for references, and I don't think Easter egg has to be something that doesn't that shouldn't exist, but I think it can still count as something that they don't bring a ton of attention to. When it's part of the plot, no, it's not an Easter egg. That's just part of the plot. But say like in Star Trek Into Darkness, when they're walking and talking, and they make a comment about the mud incident or Nurse Chapel, I would call those are closer to Easter eggs for me.
No, I don't consider that an Easter egg, really. My example in the Discord that I used is that in video games, they do things frequently where like the designers have an edge of a level, and if you get behind it or something, there's occasionally like a little note from the devs that says it's a sign that'll say like, this is the end of the game, please turn around, things like that. Right. That's an Easter egg because it's breaking the reality of what you're doing. And
I don't think you're wrong. I just think it's a broader catch-all term now for stuff like that.
So let's get into Picard. We've talked enough about that. So we're going to play some music, and then we'll come back, and we'll break it down. But for those of you on YouTube, you're not going to actually see any music. All right, Clay. So this is it. The first episode of Star Trek Picard. It's called Remembrance. It is the first of the first season of this. It came out on January 23rd, 2020. Teleplay goes to Akiva Goldsman and James Duff. Story credit goes to Akiva Goldsman, Michael Chabon, Kirsten Bayer, Alex Kurtzman, and James Duff. Directed by Hanel M. Culpepper. At the end of the 24th century, the 14 years after his retirement from Starfleet, Jean-Luc Picard is living a quiet life on his vineyard, Chateau Picard. When he is sought out by a mysterious young woman, Dahj, in need of his help, he soon realizes that he may have personal connections to his own past. So it's been a long wait. We've been waiting for Star Trek Picard to come out. It finally did. Here we are, and now we're going to talk about it. So what did you think of Star Trek Picard, the first episode?
Not happy. And I'll tell you why. Picard goes to Starfleet, the archives. They have plenty of opportunities to do so, but we never get to see what the goddamn pins look like. And it's the only thing I care about. I know it's probably coming, but I was just waiting for it. As soon as I saw the black and the yellow, I was like, oh my God, they've got those insignias on. I can't wait to see what they look like. And totally didn't fulfill my expectations there. So I'm writing off the show as a whole.
Data's wearing a pin, right? In the opening sequence, he must be. He must have a
little, but that's an old one. He's got the
you want the new one. He's got the Nemesis.
I want to see what the new stuff looks like. I don't care about the old stuff. No. No, I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. Some people have gone back and forth, I've seen, about the pacing of it and how it's quote unquote slow, but I actually don't mind it. I think it's just very deliberate, and it's not like nothing happens in the first episode. A lot of stuff happens. They give you a lot of information. They do a good job of getting Picard, showing you where he is in his life and giving him a catalyst to move forward. I thought the flashback stuff or the dream sequence stuff worked pretty well. It's always nice to see the Enterprise D. Overall, I like that the story is basically like Star Trek meets Blade Runner, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought it worked really well for me.
I liked it. I think that it's funny because going into it, all the reviews were like, it's pretty slow through its first 3 episodes. And I don't really agree with that. I think that
I don't either.
It's what it is actually is I think it feels like it definitely has problems in it. And like going into it, I still am an idiot and I still sort of take Star Trek Twitter at its word when it's like reviewing things and people are saying like, this is the greatest episode that I've ever seen. Like what a masterpiece of things. And I think it has problems. I think that it has a lot of Discovery holdovers and Into Darkness holdovers, but I think that the material that they're doing kind of disguises it in a way because I think that for as great looking as this is, I think this is probably the best looking Star Trek show they've ever done.
Looks fantastic. It looks great. Yeah.
Very, very well shot. The effects look good. It's grounded and not super sci-fi at this point anyway. Things look, I think they did a good job of making things look both like old Star Trek and kind of new, like the Borg cube at the end looks very like an updated version of what the cube would look like. And I think the Enterprise D looks good. What I think that they stumble with is, I saw Darren, guest of the podcast on Twitter, saying that it struggles to combine TNG exposition with modern pacing. And I don't think I agree with that because I think that it's not doing TNG exposition. I think it's just very bad at doing exposition. These modern Trek shows are like really bad at doing exposition, I think. And I think that this one struggles. And of course, we're grading this on a curve because it's the pilot. But here's my example. The second to the last sequence where Picard goes to the Daystrom Institute and he talks to that doctor. They are talking to each other about stuff that both of them know, and they are both acting as if this is new information that they're being told to each other, right? Like,
is that stuff that Picard would know?
Why wouldn't he know any of this? She's like, did you know that rogue synths attacked Mars? He's like, are you kidding me? Bruce Maddox did this? Why does Picard not know this? If he's resigning from Starfleet about all of this stuff, and this is not a secret, she's just telling him like a tour guide, like this is the stuff that went on. I find it bizarre that he doesn't know this stuff, and it only comes across as they're doing it for the audience's benefit of trying to catch people up. And I know that in TNG there was exposition. They would beam down to a planet and they'd say like, yeah, this is a mining planet where we drill for mines and we're inventing a new kind of mining drill. And you go, okay, that's very exposition-y, but it makes sense that the characters wouldn't know that at that point. Here, you disagree?
I don't know. Explain to me why you think that stuff Picard would know.
Because she's telling him about the synth attack. She's telling him what happened to B4. She's telling him what happened to Data. She's telling him all this stuff about like what Data's sort of like what the process of building these synths was. They shut down the Daystrom Institute. None of this seems to be top secret. And because Picard resigned over all this stuff, I'm shocked he has no information about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess so.
The other example I'm going to go to is the Romulan scene at the very end, where the Romulan is talking to the second clone of Dahj or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Those people they're like, their conversation is, "Hey, nice to meet you. Nice necklace." She's like, "Yeah, my sister gave this." He's like, "My sister died." It's this very blunt conversation between the two of them, and I think that it suffers from that. That's my big problem with it.
You know, I didn't really mind it for the most part, because I mean, it's information that you need to have. You know, I thought the stuff at the Daystrom Institute was pretty interesting. And I mean, that's information that you as an audience member does need to get. And so I feel like they kind of run the gamut of expository devices in this episode, whether it's slightly off-screen news camera footage or doing an interview with someone who was there for whatever, who can run through it for you. Or dream sequences, or just flat out having a conversation about it. There's a lot of stuff they have to get to, and I don't know. It didn't really bother me. I don't know how else they would give you that information.
I think you'd pace it out better, because that's my idea of the pacing problem. I'm a little bit surprised that this first episode, I went in expecting what a couple of days in the life of Picard are like at this point in his career, because they don't really do that. They just say he's unhappy. He has one scene. He's like, I wish I could go back, or I could do something. And I would say that the pacing is generally not great, I guess, because I think Dahj is a good example of that. When she shows up, Picard is just like, "I'm all in. Whatever you need. We're doing this. We're doing this weird together. Me and you, we're going to do this, baby."
Some random person shows up to his house talking about how she just killed 3 people, and he's like, "Yeah, tell me more." And
he's like, "I believe you."
Doesn't immediately call for the cops or something.
This could all be going towards a thing where this is like a senile Alzheimer's dream of Picard, where he believes this woman to be a android. Like, he never offers to cut her arm off or tear her arm off and be like, "Are you an android? Like, prove to me that you're actually an android." He just kind of buys in. I think that's a mistake, and I think that's Discovery pacing, except they've toned it down slightly, and because it all takes place on Earth, they're kind of limited in how fast they can do it. I think that's a better version of Discovery, but I still think it's very accelerated in how people talk to each other and how people exchange information and agree with each other in terms of what they're going to do going forward.
Yeah, I don't think it's that egregious, though. I think you're right in that it's hidden a lot better. And I think hiding it does a lot of the heavy lifting of making it seem less bad. I have probably more of a problem with dream sequence Data's daughter by painting revelation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit weird and kind of silly.
I feel that can be written around. Again, the caveat for all of this is the first episode, and it's hard to tell what they're going to choose to flesh out and what they're not going to choose to flesh out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need it fleshed out. I just think it's kind of a silly mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
But
in terms of what? In terms of what, I guess.
I don't know. It's just, why does she look like the painting that no one else has seen?
Maddox saw it.
When did he see it?
That's what they say. They say that Maddox designed her to look like that memory of the painting.
So he saw the painting from Data's memory?
Or he saw the actual painting. One of those two. He probably saw it from Data's memory.
Well,
yeah.
Sure, I guess. Whatever. I mean, it's not important. I don't really care. It's just I find it to be a kind of a silly mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I kind of went in thinking that they were going to do some kind of complicated time travel thing with it, so I was glad that they made it a memory of Data thing, where they just, like, they programmed him. They took his programming out, and they're like, "Oh, there's a picture. This is his daughter. He called this painting daughter. Let's make these things his daughter."
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I guess that tracks. I think it's less that the point-to-point on that end isn't as weird to me as maybe the revelation on Picard's end by dream sequence. He doesn't really, like you're saying, he's kind of all in very quickly and doesn't really do a lot of he's taking a lot of leaps of faith, let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
and is not doing as much deductive hard science reasoning.
I would
But
buy it. I would buy his leaps of logic if you had spent an episode showing how desperately bored he was. You know what I mean? Like if
sure.
he's banging to get back out there and is just like, I'm tired of these grapes. I'm tired of all this nonsense. Like and then this woman comes in and is like, I'm an android. He's like, oh my God, finally something to get me out of the doldrums here. I'd buy into that.
Well,
I don't know if we've spent enough time with Picard at this point to really make that feel like it was an earned thing.
yeah, I don't think that's the angle they're going with Picard, though. I don't think that they're going that, oh, he's just, he's very restless. I think that as they kind of do with that final, the speech he has after the girl gets blown up, he hasn't been doing anything. He's just been waiting to die. And it's not that he's not restless about wanting to get back out there. He's just actively not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get, I don't necessarily, I don't need an episode before this where he's just sort of like dicking around for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when I guess he doesn't even go to space until the third episode.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's clearly they're taking their time as it is. I don't really know if they need to take that much more time with that stuff.
You don't. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You don't think Picard's mindset is key to this whole series?
It is, but I mean, he sums it up fairly well at the end there. I mean, I guess they probably could have showed it a little bit better. I guess, yeah. But
I just feel it's rushing to get into that. I do feel that you need extended time with Picard at this point because he's definitely different. Just because Patrick Stewart is now old, like this is an old Picard, and you can attribute a lot of the way that he's played to him just being older, and Patrick Stewart has kind of changed, and he seems more mellow. He's less of a commander in this, I guess that was the way I would describe him. He seems he's more cordial and nicer to people, I think, than Picard ever was. Picard was always a little bit standoffish. And I would have liked to, if you're making that jump, like on some level when I'm watching this, because I don't spend a lot of time with Picard, it feels like Brent Spiner and Patrick Stewart cosplaying as these characters in some ways. Like it doesn't feel like I'm still in the same universe. I even think when they go back and they wear the old uniforms, they look like they don't fit right almost. Like they look like they're intentionally not fitted to them. And it looks like they're playing dress up. So I think that just to get me back into the swing of things, I would have really appreciated extended time with Picard to see what he's doing at this point, like what he does day to day. If he's not bored, I think I might be drawing the bored thing from the trailer at the end where he talks about like it's been so long since I felt space, basically. Like he it seems like he wants to get back to it. I just think that I would have appreciated that. And maybe I'm holding it against it because it feels like Discovery pacing, where they want this to go immediately and they want to get into this and they want to do all these things. But again, I was just surprised that people said that this was a leisurely paced episode because I don't think it is. Maybe over the course of the next two episodes, we're going to feel differently about it. But at this point, I don't.
Well, that's the thing, too, is I don't think that's necessarily something that has to happen before the story gets going. You know, I mean, he's got 2 more episodes on Earth before they even leave on this, whatever this mission is. So I don't, who knows what he's doing. At least one of those episodes involves him going to talk to Riker and Troy. And I think there's plenty of opportunity to spend more time with him and kind of get into his mindset just before the whole thing kind of kicks off, you know?
Yeah, I'd agree. Again, the caveat, these serialized things, it's hard to tell what's actually a problem until it's all over. And then I'll have a lot of thoughts about what it is. What do you think about Picard, the return of Patrick Stewart? Brent Spiner, too, I guess you can talk a little bit about.
I thought he was great. I mean, I thought the acting across the board was really good. I thought Alison Pill at the Daystrom Institute was really great. She really sold the hell out of that stupid necklace. Yes. That's probably one of my bigger problems is like they're reacting to this necklace as though it's not something that they bought in like a 25-cent bin, you know, one of those.
It's very simple.
Things.
It's not like it's a complicated thing that's like only an android could have built this or something like that.
And Picard responds to it by saying, "Oh, what an unusual necklace." And it's like, well, not really. It's just two
like
rings.
Two wedding bands glued together that you've stuck. Yeah. Is the ring, they do a cut towards the end where they cut from the ring to the Romulan Borg cube. They show a galaxy in the background that matches the ring. Is that supposed to mean something, or is that just like an artistic choice to have it blend into the background? there.
It just felt like an artistic choice to me. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's not. I don't know. But yeah, I thought Patrick Stewart was good. Was really good. It's
excellent running work by his stunt double.
Yeah. All of a sudden, he's like 35.
It's the Irishman, except only in running form. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I thought he was really good. It definitely is a different approach to the character, which is nice, because you get flurries of old Picard depending on the situation. Like I thought the interview scene was really good, where he's kind of just there to answer questions for a fluff piece, and then he kind of like has to dial it in a bit when he's got to throw it back in the reporter's face.
Yeah.
But yeah, he doesn't have a ton to do in this one, really. He's just sort of like discovering stuff. And it's not a lot of interaction of a really dramatic nature. But I think the way that he's playing Picard is nice, where he's not trying to just recreate the old character. He's trying to evolve him a little bit.
I think it's interesting because I have a hard time telling if it's acting in the sense of, is it just Patrick Stewart being old at this point?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell if it's a conscious choice. He feels like he's written like Picard, basically, which I think is good, which is appropriate. And I think that as a writer, you can just rely on the aging of your actor to carry that for you. Be like, play it the same, except obviously now you're operating at 25% speed, basically, because you're now very old. And I think that they did a good job of, really honestly, he's appropriate. The only scene that I think was a mistake that they did with Picard in terms of what he is now is when Dahj blows up and he's caught in the explosion for some reason.
Yeah.
And that's silly enough that you have an old man and you feel the need to put him in the explosion. It's not enough he can't just witness her blow up, and be like appalled from a distance, but safe. And then after he blows up, apparently all they do is drop him off at home and lay him on the couch.
That was weird. Yeah. There's a couple things like that I don't.
That's Discovery
say,
to me. That's Discovery writing.
There's a couple things like that feel like Discovery, but I think that they're covered by the content being good enough.
Yeah.
The other one for me is the really ham-fisted thing at the end where Alison Pill's like, yeah, I guess that's what happens when you create them, and he's like, them? So
yeah.
He's like, yeah, they're always made in pairs. Like,
always
what?
made in pairs. Always
Why?
make a backup. Just like you needed a backup mic for today. You should always have a backup.
I guess so. But it's like it's a little bit of a ham-fisted way to, make it a hard and fast rule to explain why there's a second one. Whatever. I prefer that instead of drawing it out. Like the one thing I'm really happy about is that there's a lot of stuff that could have. I think we kind of speculated was going to be more mysteries for the season, that they just tell you what's going on right away.
Yeah,
like the girl in particular. The thing that we were worried about is that it was the story was going to be one of those. The girl is the key to everything, but nobody knows what her thing is. It's like they tell you in the first episode she's an android, a super advanced android that was created by a single neutron cell or whatever.
Unless this is all not true, which could happen. They could flip that and say none of this has actually been the case. Is she dead? Do you think the original version is dead? Did you ever see a body?
Yeah, she looked pretty dead when
she was going. She was on her way to death.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, anything like that is possible. But as far as it stands right now, who is the girl is not a mystery, and I appreciate that because
we don't have to worry about it. We can get to the interesting stuff, which is figuring out what that means. You don't have to worry
about it, and it's also, I think nobody gives a shit. That's the kind of mystery where it's like, in this story, why is Picard involved in this story? And if it's just, this girl is a mystery that he needs to solve, that's not interesting from a Picard angle. Then it's just Picard going on an Easter egg hunt.
That would be awful motivation for Picard, unless he was so desperate to get back into it. But this grounding it in data, when you've shown us a dream sequence about Picard is upset about what happened with Data, feels more appropriate. It's still too fast, I think, but it's a logical tie-in to make sense for Picard to continue on with that journey.
And it's not just that it's Data, it's that Picard has lingering regrets about not being able to save more people on Romulus and on Mars. And also that this girl, he fails her the first time around and she gets killed. And then once he figures out there's a second one out there that he has the opportunity to help, that's what gets him off the couch.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot more interesting and from a character standpoint and from a motivation standpoint than just, who's this girl who's got secret ninja powers or whatever.
The thing that I really like about this is that I do like the setup for what they've done. I don't think there's nothing remarkable about this, and this is pretty much what people have been speculating that they're going to be doing, which is that the destruction of Romulus caused this event, and then the kind of the wild card is the rogue synths, in my opinion. Like, that's kind of the strange part that they're going to add into this in some sort of contradictory or conflicting manner. I like the setup for it. I think that this is a good place to put Picard at this point. I think that it's somewhat on the note. Like, there's always this internet feedback about you don't want their Star Trek political or something when they heard about what Picard Stewart had a sort of interview about, like, he wants to talk about Brexit, he wants to talk about Trump, he wants to talk about like failing institutions. The failure of institutions has been something that every show of the past 2 decades has wanted to talk about since The Wire. I think The Wire made that like something that you want to talk about. Right. And the most on the nose I can see here is the reporter sequence, where it's clearly like this is a parody of cable news at this point, where it's kind of gotcha journalism. Like, we're going to promise to bring you on to talk about this, but actually we're going to ask you questions about this, and you're going to get upset about it. Right. That felt a little bit silly, but I think
is it the first news reporter in the history of Star? No, I guess there were reporters in Generations as well. Yes, but generally, you don't see news reporters very often in Star Trek.
So I think what I want to do is, I was confused earlier, and I think the Discord clarified what was going on here. I was a little bit confused about the timeline and what's going on here. So you can correct me if any of this is wrong. Romulus goes supernova, or the star does, and Starfleet assembles a fleet to go and rescue the Romulans. So they're building this fleet on Mars. Before they can start rescuing them, the rogue synths, which is still ridiculous. I don't know why they don't call them Soong-style androids, which is what they always call them. But those guys attack Mars, destroy the rescue fleet, and burn Mars, burn up the atmosphere. So no one can live there. There's like 100,000 dead or something.
Right.
At that point, Starfleet says, we can't rescue the Romulans anymore. So they kind of go back on their word, and that's what upsets Picard about it. So
yeah, more or less, that's what I took.
So my only conflict about this is going into it, and I think that I was importing external stuff into this. Going into this, I thought there was a refugee crisis. There does not seem to be a refugee crisis at this point, because the Romulans are mostly dead, right?
Well, they saved. Doesn't it say he saved 900 million of them?
No, that's what the fleet was supposed to do, but the fleet is destroyed, so they can't rescue them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the number is. I mean, clearly there are some left.
There are some, but I think it's a very small number. So, but this goes into just the conflict about, I was told that there was a refugee crisis, but this doesn't seem to be the case. No one in this episode says anything about a refugee crisis with the Romulans. Right. It seems to be very few, and I think it's right to make most of the Romulans die, if only because it makes 2009 Star Trek make sense, where Nero was not wrong about the Romulans being destroyed in that timeline. And like, if they had saved all of them and there was a refugee crisis, Nero's motivation is almost nonsensical, because none of the Romulans would have died at that point.
Sure.
So, and I think this is better, but it's also not a refugee crisis. So I hope they don't turn it into some kind of refugee crisis, not because it's political, but just because it doesn't make much sense narratively if they've saved a lot of Romulans from what happened. I think the failure is more important to this storyline, and that regret that Picard was not able to do anything is more important for how he feels at this point.
Yeah, that's what my read of it was, is that it's I guess refugee crisis isn't the right word, but it's more that they did nothing to help the people who needed the help.
Right. They went back on their word. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially. Which I think is a lot more interesting, especially because it's a choice made that isn't inherently evil, but it's not inherently right, that they went back on their word to save the Romulans in order to quell the synth revolt or whatever. That stuff is still my least favorite part because it just sounds so hacky sci-fi.
It does. It sounds very
a bunch
generic.
of synthetics attacked a ship building place on Mars. That's not Star Trek.
Yeah.
But whatever. I'll take it.
I mean, you're left with, so you have the Romulan Borg cube at the end. And if this is the way they're going, the way that I'm speculating is that the Romulans are pretty much shattered at this point. And in order to bring themselves back, they need to use this Borg technology, which is pretty much overpowered and will be able to sort of rebuild their civilization or something like that.
I wasn't, I mean, obviously we don't know because we only just got a quick shot of it, but
they call it a reclamation site, interestingly.
Yeah, I assumed that they were using it's not just the Romulans who are doing stuff over there. I took it as because the other twin was over there. I took it as more of like that's where the UN or whatever was using as their base for Romulan aid or something. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
But I could be wrong. But that's just what my assumption was based on that one shot. Obviously, they'll expand on it.
And outside, I mean, so I guess we'll see. There's no point in really speculating on the podcast about what that is. But that would be, I guess I was a little bit relieved that it's not a refugee crisis, I guess. Yeah. And again, not because it's a political hot button issue or anything like that, but just because I don't think that makes a lot of sense in context of what's going on in the universe at this time. Because like, I know this is Star Trek and stuff like that, but there is this kind of question you have to ask about how can there be a refugee crisis in this universe? Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah. The other examples, planet, you know? The other examples I think always had a good rationale for it, which is the Bajorans had a refugee crisis because they believe that Bajor is spiritually important, so they don't want to leave there. The Maquis considered that place to be their home, and they were upset that the Federation sold them out. So they were fighting because the Federation sold them out. The Romulans are a species that moved to their planet from Vulcan. So it's not like they lived there forever. Like they're pretty much nomadic as it stands. And so having them be unwilling to leave, and also, as someone mentioned in the Discord, the Romulan Empire implies they have multiple planets in their grasp. You know, they're a thing at this point.
I guess, I don't know.
It's hard to logically say how a refugee crisis works in this universe.
No, yeah, I'm just sticking on the Empire thing. I don't know if that necessarily means they have multiple planets, but
you wouldn't think so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the British Empire has multiple countries, but you know, I guess they don't have starships, so maybe they couldn't have. I don't know. I guess
empires conquer, I guess would be the definition.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. I think it's actually an even. I think it's an even more appropriate thing that they're doing instead of it being a refugee crisis. That they're focusing on the failure to act and the failure to help people in need. That seems like an even more relevant way to approach that. Yeah. Instead of just doing the generic refugee thing, which
too many people. Yeah.
Yeah. Which
is, and it also fits 2009 because if you want to tie them together, Picard tries to do the rescue fleet, right? And Spock acts on his own to try to stop something, but he also fails at stopping it, which causes this timeline split to go through. And I think I think the way that we're talking about it now, both of those make sense in this timeline.
Yeah. Excuse me. And it
not that I care about the time together, but I was hoping that it seems like it's the jumping off point that I didn't want there to be a weird mistake made and be like, why is this happening at that point? Like that doesn't really tie in. And I think they did a good job of fixing that.
Yeah. I mean, for all the things you can criticize Star Trek for generally, adherence to continuity or lack of adherence to continuity is actually not, they do a pretty good job with it.
Yeah.
Even at least in the stuff you watch on screen. The thing that I really like about the failure to save Romulus or the Romulans,
lives, Clay, save lives, not Romulan lives.
The thing that I like about that is it's sort of ultimately it was the test for the Federation and for Starfleet. Like that's what they're there to do, essentially. And they failed at it.
Yep.
And I find that to be very interesting. It's more so than a lot of other ways that they try to put a bit of a stain on Starfleet. Like I would take this 100 times out of 100 over whatever Marcus was up to in Into Darkness, like, because it's not born out of evil or subterfuge. It's just they had to make a choice, and in retrospect, it probably wasn't the best choice, but also a choice had to be made. It's one of those things also where it's like, if you really want to get into the woods about does that crisis actually make any sense? They got a lot of ships, and you could have sent like 2 Galaxy class starships or whatever the modern equivalent of that is to Mars to take out the synth guys, while you use the rest of your ships to go pick everybody up from Romulus. I don't know. Like, I feel, but
Mars is unprotected.
I like that that essentially the Federation and its greatest heroes had a giant test and everybody failed.
Yeah, and I think to allay the fears of people squawking about politics, I think the Federation's choice there has a kind of logic to it. Picard might not like it, but there is a kind of like, we're being attacked by rogue toasters, basically. Like we need to step back and figure things out. Like we obviously can't protect our front door, and maybe they'll get into this. Maybe they'll ruin that a little bit more and having a cliche evil admiral come in and say, no, like we did it because we don't like Romulans, basically because they're dirty or something. We'll see. We'll see where all that comes down to, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm expecting there to be some sort of guiding hand behind the synthetics attacking Mars. Whether or not that's from inside or from outside, I don't know. But we'll find out.
Yeah. No, Maddox is responsible for it or something like that.
I don't know if I would say, probably not that, but well, maybe. But I don't know. It seems weird that they would have him be the creator of this amazing
army.
No, well, it seems weird that they would have him be the creator of this amazing, futuristic, high-end, beautiful, synthetic person, but also be the manufacturer of the destruction of the manufacturer of the thing that gets synthetics outlawed.
That's true. Yes, that's true. I had the timeline back in my mind. I thought they were banned before they were attacked, but they attacked and then they were banned from that. So that makes sense.
So it's really a closer analog to vaping than anything else.
Yeah, that'll certainly not date the podcast at all. But it's a timely reference.
It's a timeless activity.
I did enjoy this. I think that this has potential for what it's trying to do, and I think that they did a pretty good job at. Excuse me. I think the acting is good, as you say. I think that. When you talk about Spiner in the dream sequence and Data, I suppose a little bit. We talked about on previous podcasts about how I prefer when they artificially influence Data, when they make him look a little bit not human. I think he's good here. I don't think he's lost a step. I think he looks good. I think his eyes are changed enough now where he does not look human when you look into his eyes. There's something missing there. They have a great sequence in the opening scene, the dream sequence, where as Mars starts to get attacked, I assume Data is sort of mimicking one of his offspring synths. Like he sort of turns his head very slowly in a very robotic way. And did you think of anything? Is the show going to play off the 5 queens? Does that mean something? Is that obvious? The obvious thing is Borg Queen, but I don't know what the reference or what the symbolism of 5 of them would be.
Yeah, 5 Queen of Hearts feels like a very specific thing to have him have as a deck of cards or a hand of cards. Especially when the next dream that Picard has is what gives him the idea to solve the next piece of the mystery.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that that's a coincidence.
I don't know what it could be. We'll see if it actually comes back and means something. But I did like the performance. Those two seem great together. They're obviously great. It does.
Yeah. Did you have a problem with them playing cards? Because my first thought was Picard never played cards. Data played cards all the time.
All good things he said.
That's the only time he played cards in the entire history of the show. And so I understand why they did it, but at the same time, it's not like Data and Picard were famous for having card games together.
It's just a dream, I guess. You'd have to,
Sure.
yeah, they're dreaming, I suppose, and none of that actually matters.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. I just thought it was an interesting little.
Yeah, I thought that was filmed very well. It's satisfying to hear the clinks of the chips and everything like that. And we'll see if the 5 cards actually ends up meaning anything.
Want them playing 3-dimensional chess or whatever that multi-level chess game is that they had from the original series.
Yeah. Anything else positive about this or negative? I suppose the main takeaways. I don't like the exposition really. I think that they dump a lot on you. I think that the Dahj scenes are all generally the weakest, and not because of the actress. I think that the writing there is generally too frantic for what they're trying to get across. And I was laughing at the scene. There's the scene where she escapes from Chateau Picard, and she's sitting in like a back alley, and she calls her mother on the phone, and her mother's like, "Go see Picard." And she's like, "How did you know that? I didn't tell you about Picard." And she says, "Just go." The first time I saw that, I was confused. I thought, oh, the mother is somehow in on trying to recapture her or something. But now it seems on rewatch, that's not the case. It seems like it is her mother who's trying to get her to go back to Picard for protection.
Yeah, it seems like that she knows what's going on. Yeah.
Okay, and she activates her daughter. So she's like, focus. And then her daughter can do the very quick, searching for Picard thing.
I think the worst scene in the show is probably the scene where Dahj shows up at Chateau Picard.
Yep.
For like a multiple reasons. Not only because Picard's response is to be all in right away about this, like I said, about this weird bleeding stranger showing up talking about killing people.
Yep.
But I think the dialogue that Dahj has in that scene is worse exposition than the dialogue at the Daystrom Institute.
Okay.
Because the stuff at the Daystrom Institute is stuff that the audience does need to know. And I thought that stuff was played out smoothly enough that it didn't really occur to me that Picard may or may not already know some of that stuff. Because I think the acting in that scene is really good. Like Alison Pill sells that necklace better. Like that sequence where she clocks what the necklace is and then reacts to it and then kind of like sits down and says, "I wish you would come here on any other day," or whatever.
Yeah.
She does a really good job making you believe that dime store necklace means something. But the scene at the chateau, it just reeks of modern bad TV writing, where she's talking about how she's going through beat by beat everything that happened, where she's like, "I knew how to move and I knew how to fight," and it was like lightning striking. It feels
an awkward metaphor comes in out of nowhere.
It's not the way humans talk to each other, especially in that situation. I think it's too it feels too much like TV writing.
Picard's like, "I alone love you, I alone."
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like it's just it's weird. Like
it's I complain about Discovery's melodrama, right? I think this largely avoids melodrama, but that scene is melodramatic in a lot of ways. Like it's a heightened sense of what's going on and what's necessary at that point. I think largely Patrick Stewart is able to diffuse melodrama in a large part due to his acting ability. Like when he speaks, people praised early TNG as he was the only reason that was saving things, because whenever he says a line, it sounds like it's like, oh, like that's believable in this universe that this guy would be talking about this. He feels the same way here, I think. The other thing that I was worried about Discovery was going to be action sequences. And I think that this episode definitely feels like they were like, we've had characters talking for 7 minutes. Sure, we can't lose the audience at this point. Let's have a kung fu fight. Like that's how we bring them back in. And a lot of the action here, it just sticks out to me like a sore thumb, because when you compare it to all the other Star Trek fighting, it doesn't feel like it belongs in the universe that they do here. Like whenever Data was supposed to fight or do something in the original TNG series, he would basically just grab something, right, and like crush it or something. He
fights like RoboCop.
He fights like RoboCop.
A lot of clotheslines and stiff arms and stuff. Yeah,
and this is a bit more kinetic and there's more action to it, but it's at the same time, it just, whenever they do it, it just feels like they're either killing time or showing off on some level. Like, it's like, I don't really care about this. And it does feel like it happens every 10 minutes to keep you invested in what's going on.
I honestly, I felt the same way, where it did feel like, every TV show has a really great stunt crew that they want to put to good use. And that's why that scene at the chateau was even weirder, because it, like, why does she know how to, why does being a robot make her like a kung fu master?
Yeah.
But it was, I kind of wished, like, I get it that they have to do it. They have to make it interesting or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I kind of wish that they had used it as a plot point. I think it would stand out less if they did that, where if, like, during the scene where he finds out that she's a creation of Data's positronic memory or something, he was like, well, why does she know how to fight like that? Data was never built to, like, something to make it a little bit more part of the story, instead of just, we need her to do some cool shit for 5 minutes.
My assumption is because when she's being arrested, they say she's activating, which I assume maybe this means that she's built to be some kind of android soldier in that case, like, where like she's basically Rambo, who has like a memory plug, and like he only realizes, or the Bourne Identity would be a better case of explaining what it is. Like, when you unplug him, his abilities become latent and he's able to do whatever he wants. That would be I kind of hope they don't do that. That's a very cliche type thing, but I don't know. My question about, is she truly blood and flesh, or is she an android? Like in the Inheritance episode of TNG in the final season, they had an episode where Data's mother appears, and everyone thinks she's human. It's only when she falls off a cliff and her arm falls off that people reveal that she's an android underneath everything. And what are you expecting here from Dahj? Is she an android underneath it, or is she basically a clone of someone who they're calling a synthetic?
I feel like it feels to me like there's gonna be more than just she's an android. I think there might, I mean, let's put it this way. You don't introduce the Borg into the situation unless that's going to come into play somehow. And clearly they're talking to Hugh and they're talking to Seven of Nine, who are both people who were cyborgs and are now no longer, or whatever. But it wouldn't surprise me if she was some sort of combination of the two, where it was like the key to, like, she is flesh and blood, but she's also an android. So, you know what I mean? So it's like somewhere in the middle, like closer to Blade Runner, where it's like they are synthetic, but they still bleed and stuff.
Yes.
Or Terminator.
Yeah. There's an exoskeleton or exo whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's. I think we're far enough into the future science here that the idea that there is this perfect blend of cybernetics and flesh or whatever.
Yeah. They talk about that in the Daystrom Institute scene too. Right. How about, like, is this possible? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just because she is flesh doesn't mean she's not an android, you know?
Yep. And Picard, Picard should know, because of the episode Inheritance, that he should know that it is possible to make a flesh and blood android. Blah blah blah.
Whatever,
man. Anything else here?
I did want to talk about one thing. You know how it's become kind of hip as far as making sequels to stuff, where they kind of pick and choose what bits of continuity that they want to continue, or if you've got your Halloween movies that decide everything after the first one doesn't count, or Terminator, where it's like, well, everything after the second one doesn't count, we're doing a sequel to the second one, even though it's the fifth movie. I have a lot of respect for franchises that continue their series and not only don't ignore the stuff that people quote unquote don't like or like less, but they actually like double and triple down on it. And this one in particularly, that's what I loved about this, is not only are they referencing the 2009 destruction of Romulus, B4 shows up in this movie. They don't, in this episode, they don't just reference him. He appears, like, you see his he's dead, but or disconnected or whatever.
Poor B4. He really got the shit end of the stick. Yeah.
But, it's like, I thought Endgame kind of did the same thing, where they were like, nobody likes Thor: A Dark World. We're going to double down on Thor: A Dark World by having a lot of stuff happen in that movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of respect that, because it's uh, everything that's on the table is on the table, and is equally as important as everything else that happened. So I enjoy that they take it all as a piece, and they use the most recent stuff in their timeline as the jumping off point for the next part of their story. And it's not just, oh yeah, Data, he didn't actually die. We plugged it. B4 is actually just Data now. You know,
Yes,
it's not
that would have been
stuff.
awful. They can't do that
Oh,
because
yeah.
Spiner's too old. But like they were limited in being able to do that, and that's a good decision to not have B4.
Yeah,
you know?
I saw a few places mentioning that it doesn't follow continuity with the show because it's not the same future as All Good Things. And my response was I was under the impression that future was a construct of Q.
Well, they also, the end of All Good Things has them saying we can change the future, doesn't
Right,
it?
yeah.
Like
So even if it wasn't the exact future, it was altered somehow.
it's a potential future would be the way
Right.
I guess that you can look at it. Same with
Yeah.
the past didn't happen the way that it happened in that episode either, because Picard didn't know about what was
Right.
going on at Farpoint at that point.
Right.
So.
Right. But yeah, I really appreciate when they stick to their guns as far as what has and what hasn't, which is one of the things that bugs me about Discovery, is that they kind of hand wave that stuff in a series that generally doesn't hand wave that stuff.
Picard brings that up in this, interestingly. He says you can't just wave your hand and make things go away when he's talking to the reporter about like just sort of like swiping away your problems when you're looking at the screen. I thought that was nice.
You can't just tardigrade them away.
No. Spores, mushrooms, having mushroom dinner.
It was also nice to see future Boston. That was fun.
Yeah.
It's still weird to me that modern Star Trek spends more time on Earth than any other version of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like between the Kelvin movies and they're on Earth for a while, a bit in Discovery at certain points, I think, right?
Do they go to Earth on Discovery?
Maybe not Earth.
Ever?
I know they go to
Vulcan,
but maybe not Earth.
Yeah.
But I mean, and this spends a lot of time on Earth. You see a lot of Earth in the modern Star Trek. The show about trekking through the stars.
Yeah, they were trying to get away from it in the 60s and 90s, and now it's all about coming home to where the problems are, I guess.
Yeah, which is why it bothers me with the Mars stuff, because like I said in a previous show, you hardly ever hear them mention planets in the solar system on Star Trek, and when they do, it feels kind of weird.
Yeah, they surprisingly don't say Utopia Planitia, which is the way that it's always referenced, which has always been on Mars, but they've always referred to that as that name, and they never mentioned, on Mars, what we're talking about. So they're interestingly avoiding saying the Planitia name, but they're just referencing Mars to, I guess, reinforce how close it was to home or something.
I also noticed that the chances, we talked about it for the Children of Mars short, whether or not either of those children come back in any form.
Yep.
They definitely upped the chances of that happening after we found out that the Mars thing happened 10 years ago. So those two girls are probably in their early 20s.
Yeah.
At the point where Picard started.
They really underestimated the death toll on the news reporting in Children of Mars too. It went from 4,000 to 100,000 over the course of a few minutes, I suppose.
And what I was under the impression that Picard was like on the mission to go save Romulus, but in Children of Mars, they're like, Mars has been attacked by rogue synths. Admiral Picard weighs in and says, this is bad.
Yeah.
It's like they told them what was happening in the show, but didn't give them all the specifics.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if those girls never come back, but
I wouldn't either. But I'm just saying the door is more open now than I thought there was. Yeah. I also hope. I kind of hope that there are at least a couple Romulans that have the face tattoos that
Nero has.
Nero and his buddies have, if only to tie everything together a little bit nicer.
What I think the Romulans are the only aliens that we see a Trill in this.
Mm-hmm. And whatever the Dahj's boyfriend is.
Oh yeah, they mentioned what his species is, but I didn't recognize it, or I wasn't paying close enough attention to what it is. The Romulans will be interesting, I suppose. There's a lot of Romulan characters here, and one thing that I kind of wonder about is there seems in general in modern Star Trek to be a flattening of the alien races, which is to make them all kind of human, but they just look different, like they have different makeup on and things like that. The Romulans here, to me, don't act like Romulans in a way that even when they redesign the Klingons, they make the Klingons act like Klingons. Like they're always kind of a warrior race that is like very hostile and aggressive and yelling and things like that. The Romulans here don't feel that way. And I don't know if that's an assimilation notice or something like that. It feels very of the current era where the current political mindset would be like, hey man, we're all the same. We're all literally exactly the same. Like no matter what our differences are, it doesn't really matter. Not in a sense of people should be treated the same, but we like are literally just the same kind of people, just on different era or different areas. And I think that the show is kind of embracing that, but I wonder if that's intentional or if it's just kind of we don't want to make the Romulans appear too different from the other characters at this point.
Well, to be fair, the only Romulans we actually spend time with are Picard's, housekeepers or whatever, who I would assume are more
guy at the end too.
But you see him for like 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. They don't speak like Romulans, I guess. It would be I
didn't even realize the Romulans had a specific way of speaking.
Romulans always speak very regally whenever they've been previously. They speak like all the way back to Balance of Terror. They speak very like they aren't casual in their conversation, would be how I describe them.
Yeah.
Because they're Vulcan. They speak like Vulcans, basically.
Yeah, if we're going off the way that they treated Spock and Sarek in Discovery, I would expect they're probably just going to be a little more normal, because Spock and Sarek are pretty... Like, they couldn't even let Spock be Spock. They had to say that he had, like, dyslexia. It's like, well, he doesn't talk like that because he's Vulcan. He talks like that because he has Asperger's, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see if as we see more of them.
What was your take on the Romulan blood that blows up Dahj? Is that a cyanide capsule bomb that he chews up and spits at her?
That was the only thing I could think of, because I couldn't track that otherwise, because as far as I know, Romulans don't spit acid.
Right. And his gun also blew up too. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that was.
I assume the acid ate through the gun and caused the gun to explode.
That to happen? Okay.
Yeah, but it's a weird thing that they kind of pulled out of nowhere, yeah.
Yeah. Because if it was a cyanide capsule bomb, I was like, just why are they fighting at all? Just bite into your damn things and blow her up if that's what the point of what you're trying to do is.
Yeah, like I guess the one thing that I could say maybe she's not dead is because the first scene that they have with her, their mission clearly is not to kill her.
Yes, to take her.
It's to take her. And even in the second fight, they're not really actively trying to kill her. Well, I don't know, it's tough to tell. But so yeah, the guy killing her like that does seem a little bit inconsistent, but I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's you don't know what the Romulans are doing with the Borg tech. Is this a Borg upgrade that they're giving themselves or something like that? I don't think the Borg ever did that, but who knows? Maybe you can do something with it.
I gotta say, I'm fairly excited to see what the modern TV update of the Borg is.
Mm-hmm. They show a clip at the end of the.
You get a really quick look at one of them, but I'm more interested from the neck down.
Because we were talking about that, right? The Borg of First Contact are really good, not just because of the way they sound and look, but because there's also a sort of butchering aspect to what it is to become a Borg. Like they cut off people's arms and then reattach them with cybernetics, where in Best of Both Worlds, they have that scene where Picard just holds up his arm and they slip over a power glove over.
Put a glove over his hand, like a Captain Hook arm.
Which is thematically not as impressive as what it means to be a Borg, which is to give up a part of you. Like your mind is literally gone, and then they literally cut pieces off of you and replace it with other machine parts.
Which is why I've never liked the idea that you can seemingly fairly easily come back from being a Borg. I don't mind that you can come back, but like, if you capture 7 of 9 the Borg, and then 2 episodes later or whatever, I don't know how long it takes. Don't kill me. 2 episodes later, you've got Jerry Ryan. It's like, well, I don't know. That's a little tough to believe. Like
even the Borg respected my bitch and bod enough to leave it alone.
They only kept it to like my eye and like my hands. But like I would be more okay with that stuff if it turned out that people who came back from being Borg had a lot of like prosthetic cybernetic replacements. So it's like their mind is back, but the Borg has destroyed their body to an extent that they have,
Yeah.
you know, it looks like they've got regular hands, but it's robot hands, you know?
Hugh's makeup kind of does that for me. They never had the ability to do that on the show, but the updated makeup does look like it's a big scar. Like the replacing of the Borg implants is like devastating to you. You carry the scars. Like he literally has a sort of slice of his face kind of fixed on him, and I think that's important to have it.
I didn't watch Descent. Do we ever see him on the show turn back into human?
No.
No, okay.
In TNG, no. Hugh, at the end of Descent, Hugh goes off as leader of the Borg like the Borg sect that he has individualized, and he goes off with them at the end of it. Yeah.
So you can assume that the people that he's with in this show are probably those people.
You would think so. That would be logical. Yeah. Okay, I guess that's it. Let's take a little break. We'll come back, give our final thoughts, and then wrap it up. All right, Clay, we're here. We're on the stream, so it's a lot faster. But final thoughts about this quickly, and then we'll wrap it up. And then, guys, we'll take a online Q&A at this point. We haven't been responding to the comments in the stream, but we will at this point after this proper podcast ends. So, Clay, final thoughts.
I thought it was good. I really enjoyed it for a first episode. I think it did everything it needed to do to get you into the story and get you going on stuff. I thought they used the old stuff very effectively, as far as not just dwelling on it or just showing it for the sake of showing it, but using it as a catalyst to move the story forward, which is really important. And so it's not just, fan servicey stuff, which I hate saying that, but you know what I mean.
I know our fan service per minute ratio is going way up recently over the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's not having a tribble on Lorca's desk and a Gorn in the background. It's actually stuff that makes sense, and they're using it to push the story forward. Didn't
you see that
it's the visual equivalent of why the Beastie Boys song works and beyond, and why it doesn't work in 2000.
Yeah, a lot of people are angry about the Beastie Boys. We won't get into that now, but did you notice that the scene at the start after Picard has been walking around his vineyard with number one, his dog, he's like, it's not what does the dog have, it's whom. It's actually a tribble. Dog caught a little tribble in his mouth and was
Is it?
Around. No, I'm just kidding. It's some kind of small animal.
I can tell you though, that dog's got a couple big tribbles hanging between its legs. Holy shit. Yow.
Patrick Stewart does not believe in butchering his animals, I suppose, at this point. We'll say number one, we'll see how number one comes to bear in this. I like this as well. I did enjoy it. I liked it more than the Discovery pilot. I think it has some holdover problems. I think that the writing could potentially be interesting going forward. It could potentially be...
At least they didn't do that thing in Discovery where the show opened with Georgiou and Burnham walking a giant Star Trek Starfleet insignia into the desert sand.
Yes.
Do you remember that's how the show started?
That's how they found them. They carved a insignia into the sand.
Ugh. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Well, the cutscene from this is that you pan up and you see that the vineyard vines are growing in the shape of the insignia, and that's the Picard.
They're gonna pull back, and it's gonna be in the shape of Data's face. He was here the whole time.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought this was good. I enjoyed it very much. Maybe not very much. I had some problems with it. I thought it was solid. I think that it has potential to grow, and it's not as bad as it could have been. Really, that sounds very negative. I did enjoy this, but I was relieved that it was not Discovery redone. It feels different than Discovery.
I would go on the opposite side, about the same. I would swing my pendulum about the same way, the other direction, where I would say I think this is probably as good as you could have hoped for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I feel like really being upset with it is fairly disingenuous. I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm just saying in general.
Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone's upset with it, really.
That's good. I hope not.
Yeah,
I'm just assuming that there are people who are upset with it, because there always is.
There will be.
Loud.
There will be.
But yeah, I think it's about as good as you could hope it would be, as far as something that's continuing a beloved franchise that's been off TV for 25 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Using the old stuff, bringing in new stuff, and giving you a story that doesn't feel like it's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And doesn't fall too much into the Discovery trap.
Last comment real quick because people want us to talk about this stuff. What'd you think of the intro music? Not the Blue Eyes, but the Picard theme song.
I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, I liked it. I liked it. It was fairly restrained. It feels kind of a piece of Discovery. It feels similar to Discovery.
Yeah.
And I
Someone
like
made a Doctor Who reference I didn't get, where apparently it's a very Doctor Who thing to have the character appear as the title appears. Is that true?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I didn't really think that, but that's I guess so.
I
liked it.
Yeah, I found it unmemorable, sort of, which is not bad. I wouldn't say it's a bad song, but it's very mellow, which I think fits the tone of the series, but it didn't, I listened to it a couple of times and I still can't really like give you the melody back or anything. Like I had a hard time. It didn't sink in with me.
It's a very modern TV theme where it's a lot of like dun 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 dun, that kind of which they do in every show now.
That's it, guys. Thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed the content, thank you very much. And for listening, you can support the show at patreon.com/thepensky-file if you're so interested. A couple $1 a month gets you extra stuff, extra podcasts, and all that good stuff. We'll do more streams and things, blah, blah, blah. Patreon.com/thepensky-file. And as always, we give a shout out to our Captain tier supporters: Andrew Cherlog, Ben Douglas, Captain Quark, Cardinal Doomsday, Christian Michaels, Christian Pouch, Darth Mosk, David Beardmore. Let me expand this a little bit more, David. David K., Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, HH28, Yarpy, Jeffrey Koch, Joint Mango, Jordan Cooper, Kevin Reyes, Cal Barrett, Mad Courier 6, Matt Cutler, Matt Ross, Mike Burnett, Nathan Elliott, Neil Brennan, Nick Sergi, Robert Cummins, Russell Elliott, Samuel Custer, Grimstan, Sean Spinobi, Tark, Latif, Tom Howes, Vault 13 Hero, and to Will Yates. Thank you very much for your support. I think that's pretty much it. We'll be back with the next Picard episode in a little bit. Otherwise, check out Rotten Horror Picture Show, the new podcast with Clay and Amanda that just came out, and rate and review that on Apple just to get that ball rolling. It's always helpful when you at least get a couple reviews so people know that the show actually exists and does things.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be great. The response to it so far has been pretty good, so hopefully some people head over there. We did The Shining on our first episode, and people seem to enjoy it. And the next couple of weeks we've got Frankenstein. Wes is going to join us for Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which was really Wes Teasdale's New Nightmare, I think.
It was a new not to spoil my opinion of that movie, but yeah, that's it.
And after that we do The Quiet Place, and then A Quiet Place, and then our first randomizer 5 movie is Starry Eyes, which is a lot of fun.
Good, looking forward to it. I guess so. Unless people really complain about how this sounds on the podcast feed, I think this is how we're going to do the Picard coverage, just because it saves me time to get these things out. So we'll do it streaming on YouTube. We'll ignore the chat for a little bit, and then we'll do an after show thing. I will chop up the podcast and just cut out the audio bits that's not us talking to chat and put that up on the podcast feed for people interested. Unless people really give me negative feedback, that's how we'll do it. So if you have a problem with this and you don't think it's good, let me know. You can email me or whatever, Twitter or whatever. Maybe do it politely, but just say you don't like it would be a good way to go about it.
Dear fuckface.
Dear fuckface, how dare you fuck this up? I think that's it. Maybe we'll do this Thursday night, depending on what Clay's schedule is. Thursday night might work better. We'll have to see. I'll let you know. I'll put it up on Twitter, all that stuff. All right, that's it, Clay. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us, and we will see you next time. Who's shouting? No one's shouting. Hey, guys in chat. How are you, everybody? I see you've all been there. You've been typing for a little bit. I'm scrolling back up.
Can you shoot me the link for the chat?
Oh, sure. Let me do that. So we'll do this chat now for a little bit. Let me share this.
Because I do feel like I'm in some sort of weird isolation tube, because I can't see you and I can't see the chat. I feel like everybody's talking about me.
Let me send this over to you. Is this going to work? That did not interfere with things. You got it?
Yeah.
All right, so there's the chat. All right, so we're back in. So I don't know if Ilko DeBoer is talking about me to stop shouting. I don't know who's shouting. It's wonderful that we're now in the present in the Trek timeline. The last canon event was the destruction of Romulus, and this is all unknown story from here out. I do think that's a positive for this. Going forward, that is going to be the big difference maker. This, Alan Sepinwall wrote about it. Oh, thank you, Matt Ross. Very kind for the Voyager the Voyager Fund. I have to say thank you to Matt Ross and to Samuel, who also generously donated to us the other day.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
The Alan Sepinwall was just writing about saying that the other shows the more recent Trek reboots have not had a reason to exist, really, in a way that this one does kind of have a reason to exist, or at least it narratively feels like it needed to. The reason Discovery didn't have a need is because Fuller's idea was they took his idea and then he left the show, and they were like, well, now we're not going to do his actual idea, so we're just going to stick with this weird prequel timeline. And then eventually Discovery has to jump out of that to fix itself.
Yeah.
But that's about it. And Kyle asked about the music. I thought the music was fine. We talked about the intro theme. The Romulan theme at the end, I only recognized because people said it. I would not have recognized that ordinarily outside of that. The music was fine. I don't notice music all that much in TV. Let's see. Well, if there's any questions, otherwise I'll give people a chance to talk. Some people have left, I suppose, but I don't know if there's any comments that we missed. There's obviously a whole bunch, or any questions. Let us know about it. Such a promising start with the pilot. What are the potential biggest missteps you would warn the showrunners to avoid moving forward? Do you want to answer
Dance
that?
sequences, mostly. Never a good call. But yeah, the biggest misstep. I think, I don't know. I think the biggest misstep is that they can avoid is not making it too plotty like Discovery is, and letting the characters breathe a bit more. Which hopefully the next couple episodes, where Picard goes to talk to Riker for some reason and does something other stuff on Earth before he leaves the planet at all, allows for that stuff to happen a little bit more. But even once they get going, I don't want it to turn into Discovery season 2 where it's like backflip upon backflip upon backflip as far as the story goes.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of wow factor,
Which is what will happen if my thing about maybe she's not dead happens. If they start flipping what Dahj is and start being like, well, actually what we told you in the pilot is not the case. She's actually this thing. It's like, all right, this is very much a Discovery trope of like, you think you have the truth and then we kick it out of your hands and you have to go chase it for another episode.
Well, it depends. It depends on the way that happens, because one of the things that generally happens in most stories is your character wants something, and then about halfway through the story, your character ultimately gets it, but then it turns out to not be exactly what they thought it was going to be.
Right.
And so that's an instance in which they could do that. It all depends on the execution of it. Like if the explanation is really satisfying and cool, then that's great. But if it's just for the sake of doing it, then that would be kind of...
Yeah. James VD Bosch says, I got the feeling that the Borg cube was surrounded by cloaking devices at the end. There were little glowing green triangles surrounding the Borg cube. I don't know what those were. I thought they were just kind of ships or something like that. But it does bring up the question. I think you had floated the idea. You thought it was like a UN base or something. I got the impression it was just purely Romulans doing it. And someone else here is asking whether or not Starfleet knows about the cube. My impression was that Starfleet would not know about the cube. It is just floating out in the middle of nowhere, but who knows? If it's cloaked,
the only reason that I think that they would know about it is because the twin was there, and she seemed to be there on like a humanitarian kind of mission. So I just assumed that whatever they're doing there is not necessarily unknown. But who knows?
So you think that Dahj 2 was sent by Starfleet or something to be there?
Something
She's
like
a part.
that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think you only see Romulans outside of her, but I don't know. There's Romulan ships. The ship design is another weird thing. Like, it is pretty generic sci-fi at this point with their ship designs, except for the Enterprise D. It was nice that the Enterprise D looked like it should look, I think, in terms of this being the same character and it's the same ship.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like...
it's obviously CG. It's not a model, which is fine.
It's just going back to the core problem with Discovery and its concept is that they've got these ship designs that clearly the same people who are working on Discovery, or at least the same concept designers, are working on this. So the ships in this look a lot like the ships in Discovery.
Yeah.
But the ships in Discovery are supposed to be like 200 years before this.
Yes.
So you run into this problem where it's like, oh, if Discovery had taken place in the future, where past the end of Nemesis or whatever, then the ships looking similar wouldn't be a problem. Like, I mean, even
we only saw the Enterprise in this though, and right though, do we see another Federation starship? We see shuttles, which are whatever. I'm like, fine, a shuttle can look like whatever. I think
we didn't see Federation shuttles, but unfortunately, but I mean, it's all part of a piece. Like all these concepts end up looking the same anyway in these.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the Romulan ships have the same angularity that Discovery has, which has the same angularity.
They look like Klingon. They look like Klingon birds of prey. Actually,
yeah. I actually kind of liked it in like the shape that it throws.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it felt a little stock. But I mean, it felt the same. The design felt of a piece with the synth ships too, which are like those flying triangles.
Yes, those feel very generic. Yeah. Which I think you could. Which I think you can make thematic. You could be like, it's like the Borg cube, how the Borg are so uncreative that their ship is a cube, and it's just like, this is just what it is. The androids could have no aesthetic to their function and would just be like, these are just generic ships. It's just a triangle that flies around and shoots things. Right. Yeah.
But then, I mean, Discovery is a giant triangle with a saucer on it.
Yes. That is true. It is very pointy. Ray J says, would you like to see Q in this series, season 2? No, I don't think Q works here, really.
Again, all in execution. I'd rather see Q in
Discovery.
Yeah. No, honestly, like if they're 3,000 years in the future or whatever.
He's the exposition machine that explains everything that's going on.
Yeah, why not? I think that would be great. I am all for, like I said on the Kelvin movie, be bold, guys. I mean, I guess Discovery was probably a little too bold, but like you can cross certain lines now that you really couldn't do before, where it's like they're 1,000 years in the future. There's no reason why Q can't show up and have it make total sense.
Yeah. Which TNG main cast member would you most want to see appear, and which the least, from Kyle? So I assume this is not realistically bound. This is just like our personal opinion about who we'd like to say.
Well, I was going to say it's not a regular cast member anymore, but does Tasha's half Romulan sister count?
She's been Borgified. Data is
the
one.
My first thought when they were like, Data has a daughter, was like, wow, he was fully functional.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Tasha's daughter.
Yeah, I would like to see. I think Data is the one that makes the most sense, obviously, in terms of this storyline, and to see him again. I mean, we're going to see Riker. We're going to see Troy. I feel like
Guinan probably next season.
Yeah, Guinan next season, because that went viral. Dr. Crusher is probably the one that you least need to see, really.
I was surprised she didn't show up. I would be shocked if she didn't. But I was after he got blown up and he was back on the couch at his house and his vision was kind of blurry when he was waking up, I 100% thought it was going to be Crusher that was looking at him, you know?
Yeah.
So
Jean-Luc. Beverly, what happened to me back then? How did you drag me back? Like Bashir dragging that thing.
Apparently they never got together in this version of the future.
No. We'll see. A bit nerdy, but the Romulan ship we saw reminded me of the Vandalore from Star Trek Nemesis, which is the big ship that they fight, I think,
I don't remember
at the end. We've seen a Trill in the first episode. You do. She's one of the reporter assistants. She's in the background of the reporter scene. Let's see here. We see the Federation's collapse by the time Discovery Season 3. Do you think the show will show the collapse of the entire Federation? No, because this is going to be a reversal of the failure of institutions thing. Starfleet is going to come out of this better or healed on some level.
Can't wait to see those ships. Although, based on the other designs, maybe I can.
Worf is still around in this timeline. Isn't he on the Klingon homeworld? I think he must be. He's still an ambassador, right? He must be still an ambassador going back to Kronos with Martok and things like that.
I would seeing Worf would be fun. I feel like he would be the most superfluous though. Like unless you can think of a really good reason, I feel like it's going to be like, they ham-fisted Worf into the situation.
Why do you think the synthetics are attacking?
That is a good question.
It's just an educated guess at this point. Like there's really no evidence for what they're doing. I would assume.
I'm also really happy that they haven't even put that question out in the ether. Like,
Yep.
it's not like that's not one of the secrets of the show that they're talking at the mystery box questions. Oh, why did the synthetics attack? That's not a question. It's in the background, and I'm sure they eventually will answer that, but it's not like the thrust of the show. Like, this isn't about Picard trying to figure out what happened 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
which I really enjoy.
Dahj's boyfriend is Zahian, which is the same species as Poe in Discovery. So that's a callback.
Who is Poe?
Isn't Poe
Is
the
that-
princess that comes from? She's in the short trek. Is that Poe? She's the dilithium crystal princess who like breaks onto the ship and the redhead finds her and is like,
Kyle, answer our question.
will we see Maddox and will it be the same actor? I will be shocked if we don't see Maddox and if it's not the same actor. I think that's what they're waiting to reveal is like the big thing that it's not like people would care like Data, Riker, or Troy coming back, but when it comes back and if it's that guy again, it would be like, oh, and I checked this morning, he's still alive. So he teaches acting somewhere. So it is possible to see him, yeah.
Or they could just do the Christopher Pike thing and be like, his face is horribly disfigured and
Yes.
he's in a giant wheelchair.
A synth punched him in the face so hard that he's just like a blob of faceless goo at this point. Yes, that is Poe. Okay, so that's who Poe is.
You know what? If that's the only crossover we get with Discovery, I'm fine. Like, do I really need to see like some Kelpians there? Probably not.
No. I think that's it for now. I got to get back to work. Thank you guys very much for checking this out. Let us know how it went. Otherwise, the podcast will be up soon. If you want to listen to the podcast again for whatever reason, if you missed this, or if you just don't want to watch it on YouTube.
I know. Are we cutting into our bottom line by doing this video and
I don't think so.
it's like half of our listener base on the thing here?
Honestly, the most frustrating thing is that the listener base splits almost perfectly across YouTube and the podcast. So it's not like I can abandon one and be like, oh, I'll just go with the majority and like save myself some work. It's like both sides of it get the same amount of traction. So
A lot of names in here I've never seen things before.
yes,
That's
people hot for Picard. So welcome. Thank you very much, guys, for checking out the show. If you're new, thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You can follow the show at thepenskypodcast.com if you don't want to stick around to YouTube all the time. But we'll see how it is going forward. So, guys, thank you very much. I will read some names. Alistair, James, Tunahan, Phoenix, Ray J, James, Tunahan, Brendan, Kyle, Matt Ross. Thanks again, Matt Ross. Very kind of you. David Ross. Goodbye. Thanks, guys. All right, see you later.